Well, let's bring in the panel now, and I'd like to introduce News Corp columnist Angela Mollard and One Nation National Executive Manager Lee Hansen. Lee, let's start with you tonight. And Sydney Lord Mayor Clover Moore has caved to criticism and agreed to project a menorah on the Harbour Bridge for New Year's Eve. Now, originally she committed to generic doves and the word peace to recognise Bondi Beach victims. Ms Moore got there in the end, but gee, I must say, the fact she was pressured to do so really speaks volumes.
Hi, Jaimee. And you're spot on, and it does. Isn't it a shame that it takes the community to demonstrate to their leaders how to lead, how to show respect given a horrific event, an act of terrorism, and respect the huge and tremendous loss that we've had. So well done to those community leaders, and well done to stepping up and putting the pressure on. It's a shame that they had to do that, but I'm glad they got there in the end, and I'm glad to see that that's what will occur this New Year's Eve. So fantastic news.
Well, Angela, there's some reports in the paper today that a parliamentary inquiry into the Thriving Kids program, which is designed to move children with autism away from the NDIS, it's recommended that the program be completely operational before any change to children's eligibility for the NDIS. Now, this will potentially delay the original launch time from mid-next year. Is there a concern here, though, that Thriving Kids is risking replicating the existing systemic failures that we're seeing within the NDIS?
Look, I think there is the possibility that that could happen if they proceed with this too quickly and do not iron it out as a separate agency from the NDIS. So what the Thriving Kids is set up to do is to look at the issues with children, the developmental issues with children aged under 8. Now, these are issues in terms of neurodivergence, children on the autism spectrum, which were never intended to be part of the NDIS remit. Now, there's been discussions that these should run in tandem, these two agencies, that the NDIS oversight of these children should continue to happen as the Thriving Kids is brought into play. I think very strongly that they need to operate as two different agencies, and that needs to be complete transparency over how each is going to operate, where the boundaries are and what oversight is going to be involved before the Thriving Kids agency is operational. A lot of it obviously is relying on existing services in terms of health and education, and they need to have a very clear mandate as to where they will be acting.
We just have to hope that it doesn't end up being a huge blowout like we've seen with the NDIS, on track to be $100 billion a year by 2030. Lee, let's move on site now to talking about drug checking that will be trialled at a Sydney festival on New Year's Day. So this is an event called Field Day that's been going on for quite some time, but it's going to be the 9th music festival in New South Wales to participate in this trial. What do you think of this initiative?
Look, the whole drug testing thing, to be honest, a little bit torn in some ways. As a parent, I understand you want to keep your kids safe, but I have to follow my gut feeling. And I actually don't support these programs personally. And I'll explain why. You know, I was having this conversation earlier today, trying to flesh out, do I feel comfortable with this? Do I not? And I reflect back to when I was, late teens, early 20s, living on the Gold Coast. And I used to go to Summerfield Festival and different, music festivals on the Gold Coast. Now, as a young person, I was too afraid to take drugs. I was scared. I never tried it. Because I was afraid, I didn't know what the repercussions were. I didn't want the feeling that would occur. If the drug testing is available, are we not just encouraging kids to take that risk more than getting them to shy away? So I'm afraid it's actually teaching our kids the wrong message. And in addition, you've got to come back to the root cause facts. Why are more and more people taking illicit drugs or illegal drugs? And the fact is, a huge contributing factor is that alcohol is far too expensive. So rather than sending the wrong message to our young people today, or party goers at these festivals, shouldn't we actually be sticking to the crux of it? It is an illegal drug. It's not allowed in this country. And instead starting to reduce the ridiculous amount of taxes on alcohol these days and make that more of a safer environment, instead of, as I say, sending the wrong message to our young members of society these days.
Angela, do you think it's sending the wrong message to the younger generation, or is it safeguarding and giving them the opportunity that if they're going to take it anyway, we may as well go and get it tested?
I'm against it, but for a completely different reason, and that is, where is the legal liability? So let's say you have your drug tested, let's say it's an ecstasy tablet. It is then taken by a young person, something around their physiology or the circumstances with which they then take that drug, lack of water, whatever that might be. Who is then culpable? Is there a culpability to the agencies testing the drugs? Also, even if you test a drug, do you then have control about how that person operates while under the influence of that drug? So they could actually cause harm to another person while under the influence of the drug. So while I am in favour of harm reduction programs in terms of drug taking, because, you know, let's be honest, drugs are taken at festivals and they will continue to be, as Lee points out, because they're very cheap. I think the legality issues are paramount in this instance.
Well, that drug checking trial will include up to 12 music festivals before it's independently evaluated on whether or not to even continue it. Well, Lee, let's head overseas now, when Presidents Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu met earlier today, with Trump threatening new attacks against Iran, blaming Hamas for the stalled Gaza ceasefire and calling again for Mr Netanyahu to receive a pardon. What did you think of their interaction?
Look, good on Trump. I agree we need to get rid of Hamas. He is standing by his word. He has been a very strong leader and the strongest leader in supporting ceasefire in Gaza and Israel. So I actually would like to see stronger leadership from our Prime Minister and our government here in Australia. We need to get rid of Hamas wholeheartedly. So well done to Trump. He's standing by his word, and let's just see and hope, wishful thinking, that our Prime Minister will actually stand up and back the ceasefire and getting rid of Hamas as well.
Well, Trump has ramped up the pressure on Hamas to disarm. Let's take a look at what he said.
We're going to be given a very short period of time to disarm, and we'll see how that works out. Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner will be in charge of that from our side, but if they don't disarm, as they agreed to do, they agreed to it, and then they'll be held to pay for them. And we don't want that. We're not looking for that. But they have to disarm within a fairly short period of time.
So, Angela, do we think Hamas is paying attention and they will disarm?
Well, I think one of the reasons why Netanyahu has made this fifth visit this year to America to discuss this with Trump is because obviously that pressure has to continue. It's 81 days since the ceasefire on the 10th of October. They haven't disarmed. Where is the pressure going to come from? But I thought what was also extremely interesting about this meeting between these two leaders was the pressure that they are indicating they're going to put on Iran. Now, of course, there's a lot of protests and unrest in Iran at the moment. The currency has crashed. It's an interesting time for Trump to signal that that they will go back in and they will destroy those weapons and missiles if they become aware of them. So this was an incredibly strong meeting with a lot of rhetoric that we come to know from both of these men. But particularly at this time of the year, I think really interesting that they are not letting up on any of this messaging in this region.
And Lee, I want to stay overseas because there's just been a remarkable story coming out of the US. A YouTuber has uncovered enormous fraud in Minnesota, with experts claiming this could be in excess of $9 billion. FBI Director Kash Patel has posted this on X. And you can see here, he has basically said, this is a tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children. And this investigation is very much ongoing. But Governor Tim Walz, he has said that they have done everything they can. Authorities have not overlooked the fraud. But Lee, this has happened on his watch. Shouldn't he be held accountable?
I'll put this question to you, Jaimee. If it's not the government's to hold fraud of the taxpayers' dollars accountable, then who is it? Whose job is it? So yes, I absolutely believe that on any government's watch, including Australia, that fraud needs to be checked and maintained and held and cracked down upon at all states of government, all levels of government. And the fact is, you know, even think about Australia here. We've got the same thing happening here, not the same example, but you think about Medicare fraud. We estimate about $3 billion in Medicare fraud a year. NDIS, it's up to $6 billion in NDIS fraud. What are our governments actually doing about it? And it goes beyond just the fraud of taxpayers' dollars. Governments and politicians need to be held accountable, not only for protecting the taxpayers' dollars, but their spending. You know, you think about the latest taxpayers' dollars with travel spending that's happening across the government. And politicians make all these promises, they're going to do this to get elected, and then nothing happens. So yes, governments and politicians absolutely need to be held accountable. And if they don't, they should be removed from government and they should be lose their job. Just like any other employee in any other job, if you do not perform, you're gone, you're out. Not waiting till the next election and the next false round of promises to the people, to the public.
Well, Lee, we need that YouTuber to come and do some investigations here on Australian soil. Angela and Lee, I'll leave it there.